business, you failed, but you tried again. What are the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Before I talk about challenges, there is one area, I mean, when we talked first about defining entrepreneurship, maybe I want to highlight a point, what is the difference between micro businesses like the cupcakes or something where the woman would do in her home, and then you get orders via the phone, and then maybe send her driver with the product that she's selling. And the other side of the building a business, where it's a small or medium, large corporations, the ability for a woman to build an organization and a business that is that can employ hundreds and hundreds of employees is different. I mean, we see a lot of women within the category of micro or small businesses, which is easy because it helps them with the work-life balance, versus having the ability to really build something that is big and create organization that survive for past 5 and 6 and maybe 10 years. That's extremely challenging. Challenging, why? Because, I mean, especially for women, I would assume, is having, I always go back to experience. Building your network and having mentors that have done it before that help you do it again. And having the ability to build a team with you to execute your idea and take it to the next level and build it big and have the impact that we want on the economy in terms of job creation, having the ability to export your product outside of the country, affecting your GDP. This is the area, I think, where females need the most support and find the most challenge. It's high impact entrepreneurship. This is the area where I think all the support should go in terms of helping female entrepreneurs and even entrepreneurs in general have the ability to scale. It's very easy to have an idea and test it and build the product and put it in the market and sell the first few hundred items. However, it is very difficult for you to sustain that idea and keep selling it and reach the thousands and the millions that you want to achieve. And reaching the point where you create a business that has an impact not just within your small geographic area, but to go bigger than that. I guess I always think that the more mentorship you give women, the more relationships they can build with experienced business leaders, the higher the likelihood for a female enterprise to reach the high impact level.
Joshua, again, you have gone actually through the experience itself and two regions, which is Hong Kong and the States. We'd really appreciate if you can actually shed light on the challenges that you faced in a digital, I would say, market. I understand that you have an agency actually.
So the challenges faced in moving from one market to another. Yes, well, Hong Kong is a very business-friendly market, and they strive to make it easy to set up a business there. So there was a lot of assistance that I received, and it was very easy to network into the community there. And the language challenges are very minimal because English is spoken there, and a lot of the challenges are more general to entrepreneurship, no matter where you're located or how you're trying to start a business. So when I got there, there were just questions about how to set up a business, how to file paperwork. One thing that was nice about setting up a business in Hong Kong is, whereas in the US, whenever you try to start something with your business or do something, you assume that you have to fill out some sort of paperwork, you have to get a permit, you have to get a license to do whatever you want. And in Hong Kong, when I would ask somebody, how do I go do this? Who do I talk to? Where do I get the paperwork? They would say, no, you just go do that. You don't have to talk to anybody, you can just do it. And I found that very refreshing. I've seen that every hurdle, every small thing that an entrepreneur needs to do to start a business. From a government perspective or a bureaucrat perspective, they might say this is a simple piece of paperwork to fill out, or to submit this form is very easy. And yet for an entrepreneur who is new to this, who has never done this, doesn't know what they don't know, every piece of paperwork, every step that they have to take to get their business up and running is one more impediment. And every time there is something new to be done, you have less entrepreneurs as a result, because at some point people give up and they say, this is too much, I'm going to quit, or maybe I'll come back to this later. So the more that governments can do to remove those obstacles and streamline the process and make it very easy for people to set up businesses, the more entrepreneurs they'll have, the more businesses they have, and the more their economy will grow as a result.
Dr. Mohammed, based on your research and the various papers that you submitted, can you just share with us again what you think is the main challenges faced in the region itself?
Sure. I'll start from where Joshua finished, but those challenges, in a way, women everywhere in the world face challenges, but I just want to focus on those challenges that probably more related to women here in the Gulf and in Saudi Arabia. And please allow me, if I exceed the time, ask me to summarize. Piracy, one of the of course, challenges that women I interviewed 20 women from the Dammam business area, and of course it's generally acknowledged in the literature that Saudi government bureaucratic regulations and procedures are complex, rigid and outdated, and thus complicate the process of starting and running a business in Saudi. Remember, male entrepreneurs also face the same difficulties, but because of social and cultural factors, there is evidence that these difficulties are more significant for women, as one beauty salon owner explained to me. She went to get a license for a fitness center. She saw an opportunity in the market, and the Ministry of Commerce office in Dammam told her there is no fitness center or spa in our license categories. When she told them that there are 5 of them in Al-Khubar, they told her they operate under a physical therapy center license. And she said, I cannot afford it because I have to hire a physician, I have to have an ambulance, and a lot of requirement. So she just changed her mind about the idea. Some of the most popular businesses suitable for Saudi women entrepreneurs, for example, are not licensed by the government. For example, beauty salons. Still till now, you see so many beauty salons everywhere in Saudis, but it's still, I don't know, maybe some of the local women can understand. Mashhad, it's not a beauty salon. Fitness centers and daycare are not listed among the Ministry of Commerce business categories. Of course, as the government, or all the governments in the Gulf region strive to create jobs for young generation and to implement structural reforms given the small business sector, a leading role in economic development, clear and simple business regulations will be crucial to the success. Another challenges or hurdle face those women I interviewed, wasta. Wasta emerged as another constraint for women in my study. Of course, wasta is a powerful element at work in the Gulf business environment. In general, wasta can be identified as the process whereby one can achieve goals through links with key personnel in a position of high status. Wasta has been a central concept, it's not a new concept, in Arab countries for hundreds of years, and very influenced social interactions. It worth mentioning here in this respect that wasta today is viewed by many GCC citizens as having a powerful corrupting influence on the Gulf society. Wasta is becoming increasingly predominant in Gulf business life, as many business owners have recognized wasta to be necessary. One of the women, a very well-known designer, she said in the interview 20 years or 20 plus years ago, it was difficult for her to do any business. It was really, really hard. Now she's on TV, fashion shows in Paris, Rome, name it. the red carpet laid out. 2 years ago, she went to one of the government offices with her husband in Dammam, and actually the general manager greeted them at the front door. And of course, they usually get something in return. They would ask, for example, as she described, a discount for their wives and daughter dresses, or during Eid season. The salon is booked weeks in advance, so they phone and ask to secure a spot. Of course, I mean, going back to the bureaucracy and the rigid system, the absence of this clear and fair regulations has created dependence on wasta. Wasta can be harmful to women entrepreneurs, especially those with no connections, or many women of low social-economic status, families. They cannot have the wasta. It's important for the government, of course, to implement the structural reforms. One more challenge, which is prevailed mainly, I mean, specifically in Saudis, even in other Arab regions and the Gulf states, but with, I mean, more influence probably in Saudi society, which is the traditional social values. A woman role in Saudi seen still until today as one of housewives and mothers. Of course, according to this interpretation, according to many fatwas, the employment of women outside the home can be justified only when two basic conditions are fulfilled. First, no contact between a woman and unrelated male in the workplace, and the occupation be suitable to a woman's nature. And this can open the door for many interpretation. So when examining women's status and work in Islamic Arab Gulf states, the modernist ulama discourse emphasizes that it's not Islam itself that constraint, but the strict religious interpretation that uses Islam to justify cultural and tribal practices. Traditional ulama sometimes ignore the social context and select certain verses from Quran in an attempt to support their point of view. Traditional thought has not yet acknowledged the effect of global economic changes has on local cultures. This traditional view in Islamic thinking not only influence women's participation in the labor market, but also influence the type of the work they do. Repeated negative comments come across all the interviews about this. Of course, the changing reality of modern life in Saudi and in the Gulf states highlights the urgent need to promote progressive interpretation of Sharia. It has been argued that the revival of Islamic thought, renewal within Islamic jurisprudence, it's crucial to the advancement of women in both economic and everyday life in the Gulf region. And of course, all of the women that I interviewed identified themselves strongly with Islam. They said we are Muslim first, and then women, Saudi, tribes, whatever, while seeking an interpretation of the Quran and Hadith, which accommodates the circumstances of modern life and the aspiration of women in the context of contemporary society. I mean, one of the noticeable features in many Gulf states, Suq al-Harim, women's souk. Many of these markets have been operating in the same location for several decades. In Al-Hassa, where I come from, there are a number of them, and they are so popular. People from neighboring countries, Bahrain and Qatar, they visit every weekend, and of course the local women of lower economic status have long been using women's souk to sell a wide variety of goods. These female vendors interact with their male and female clients as the tradition of bargaining is still the norm. So it's a clear evidence that it is socially acceptable for a woman to work outside the home to earn a living while maintaining dignity. Finally, one of the surprising results, I was expecting the work-family balance would be a challenge for women entrepreneurs in Saudi. However, the analysis yielded a surprising, as I said, finding that family responsibilities were not considered an obstacle for them. Of course, one possible explanation, the family ties, they can rely on family members, the mothers, the grandmothers, sisters, aunts, to take care of their kids. And another explanation, the striking characteristics in modern life in Saudi, regardless of the economic status, most of the families hire a live-in maid or home helpers. And that's why probably this could explain why the work-family balance wasn't a hurdle or a challenge for these people.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for very detailed explanations of the challenges. I need to ensure that the audience is still awake. I hope no one is having a nap. I've asked at the beginning how many of the audience is actually having their own business, and there were at least 20 hands raised up. I need one example from the UAE perspective. We've heard the situation in Saudi Arabia, we've heard the situation in Singapore, in the States and Hong Kong. Can someone just share with us her experience? I really need to focus on the challenges. What are the challenges faced in the UAE if a female or if a woman wants to start a business? I'm glad we have someone. So what were the challenges? And can you tell us the nature of the business that you have?
Okay. My name is Dr. Tarifa Zahabri. Tarifa. And I am an educator. However, I started my business about 5 years ago, and it's in the youth engagement and consultancy. The challenge I faced myself is the idea was too innovative for the society. I brought Lego bricks to be used for training. Lego has been known as a toy, so changing the concept from bringing something way innovative in the field of training was a little challenging. So it's really bringing I would say bridging the gap between what you offer and the mentality or the setup in the society was one of the challenges. The other thing is I was one of the first female trainer. So to be in the field where all my clients were males was a little bit doubtful. So whenever I go and I said my skills as a trainer, the question would come like, oh really? So you teach or you train? And I say, well, I train and facilitate, and it's totally different than being in a classroom. So I decided really to run a lot of free workshops at the beginning to create awareness and to ensure that my skills is being there in the market. So I think the challenging comes with the expectations sometimes, and sometimes comes with the labeling of certain people's skills. So I mean that's probably something that you're supposed to be aware of.
Thank you very much. Congratulations for continuing the business. We'll move now. We've touched upon the enablers. I mean, if you recall from the discussions which we had with Latifa or Dr. Muhammad or whatever, I'm keen to understand your perspective, Joshua. There are many enablers which are required, either they're policy related or they're financial or they're cultural. What's your view on that?
This goes to the heart of creating startup communities or entrepreneurial communities. And anybody who's interested in entrepreneurial communities should read the book Startup Communities by Brad Feld. It's the book on this topic. And he divides the enablers or the supporters of entrepreneurial communities into various groups. You've got investors, you have government, you have employees of these businesses, you have these different groups, and of course you have the entrepreneurs themselves. And one thing he points out is that these communities can only be started and nurtured by the entrepreneurs themselves. Governments cannot create entrepreneurial communities, neither can investors, neither can anybody else. The entrepreneurs have to lead the way in these startup communities, which is often a challenge because entrepreneurs are busy. They're running their businesses, they're focused on their businesses, but it's very important for entrepreneurs to reach out to other entrepreneurs, to get involved and create communities wherever they can, to be involved in events, to get out, to nurture the next generation. And when entrepreneurs do this, they create a community that benefits themselves, but it also benefits everybody else. And the entrepreneurs can reach out to these other stakeholders and involve them as well. But it all starts with the entrepreneurs. Only they can lead these communities.
I need your views also, Joshua, on a new topic that is really new to the region, but not necessarily, I would say, in the Western world, which is social entrepreneurship. I mean, what's your view on this?
Social entrepreneurship gets me very excited. My business that I run, I do digital marketing, so we help companies get leads for their businesses, and it's a fun business, but there are some days where I look at problems and challenges in the world and I think, I'm just helping people make more money, and there are bigger problems to be solved out there. And that's where social entrepreneurs are coming from, is they want to change the world. They want to do something that matters. And this is such a unique opportunity in our day and age, because 200 years ago, an entrepreneur was trying to survive. He was trying to provide a living for his family. And more recently, entrepreneurs have been viewed as people who are trying to make a lot of money. They're trying to get rich. And for really perhaps the first time in history, we have a large group of young people who are growing up and saying, I'm not worried about survival. I'm not worried about money. My parents have money, or I have enough money. I'm never going to starve to death. And so if I don't need to survive, and I don't need to make money, what do I want to do with my life? And they start looking at the world and saying, I want to change the world and make it a better place. And this is where social entrepreneurs come from. They look at problems in society and they say, I want to change this and make it better. For some examples, I have a friend in Hong Kong who came across some data that many children around the world are dying from diseases that could be prevented if people just washed their hands with soap. And so he started looking for a very cheap source of soap. And he found that in hotels, people use the soap that they have for a day or two, and then it goes in the trash. So he connected with all these hotels, started collecting soap from these hotels. They recycle the soap, and then they send these bars of soap to communities where it's needed, and it saves lives. So he is one example of a social entrepreneur. And there are many different kinds of social entrepreneurs. Some of these social ventures run kind of like charities, and they receive grant money or they receive donations. In my mind, the most successful social ventures are also profitable. When a social venture is profitable, it not only is doing something good, but it is showing people that there's a profit potential there, and that attracts more people to that business. And if that business is doing good in the world, you want as many people as possible doing it, and profits attract more people to do that. So I love to see people who have a great idea to change the world, but they're also showing that you can make money while doing this at the same time, because that helps it to spread farther.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're coming to almost the end of the session, and we have around half an hour. As promised, we wanted actually give the audience a chance to ask questions. But I'll ask my distinguished speakers to actually maybe summarize their views on this topic, maybe in 1 or 2 minutes. We'll start with you, Latifa. Just final words.
Yes. I guess what I really love is the emphasis on entrepreneurship as a key enabler of growth and enabler of change and effective change in the society and in the economy as well. And the more focus that is being brought up on this subject, so whether it's from non-profit organizations or from the government or from the entrepreneurs themselves creating all these communities, will help further increase the number of women going into these ventures. And I think we need to have more and more of what we're doing right now, and help try our best to engage women as well in these talks in order to spread the ideas.
I have a list. I think that for building sustainable and gender-balanced entrepreneurship environment, there are several key factors which we have discussed and touched upon, but I thought I'd wrap it up. Firstly, it's very important to have good credit evaluation, so that when you develop your business plans, you can really see what the potential outcome is. And then you should have training to acquire better skills to have loan management, because if you have credit, you want to be able to repay and get on with the business. So part of the process is really to improve financial literacy for the loan application. That's partly my financial background coming to the fore, because very often you get really, really interesting plans, but you can't see how they're actually going to play out, and you have to take your customers through that. One thing that's very important, I think, is to develop informal and formal networking associations. And Joshua's point is that entrepreneurs are so busy doing their own business, they don't really have too much time. But I think that you have to make that transition from this informal networking you have between your family, between your friends, to more formalized platforms, first locally, then nationally, then regionally. Because you have to get out there to get more input as you develop your business. And you also need to be seen more, to have your product more accepted. Mentorship programs, yes, that's very important. And I think also training programs for small and medium enterprises to help them